Good morning, class 6. Today we will finish the chapter in the earliest cities, that is chapter 3. But before doing that, we will revise what we have studied in the previous two classes. We have studied about two boys, Jaspal and Harpreet, who were playing in the lane outside their house. When they have noticed that some people have arrived and they were examining the haunted house, which they called, and they were very impressed by the architecture and the carvings on that house. So they were they found it strange that why they are talking about its conservation or that it should be preserved for the future. Then we have talked about two sets of people. One group believes that we should preserve these ancient monuments, buildings, etc. for our future because they are the heritage, and people, they will come to know the lifestyle, the way of living, and there's a lot of things to learn from them. Whereas on the other hand, there is a set of group who believes that we should move on in life and there is no need for the conservation. Then we have studied about Harappa, which is an air first site found in the subcontinent, one of the oldest cities, when the people were laying the railway tracks in Punjab. We have studied that usually the cities were divided into two parts. The smaller part, but the higher one, was called citadel. The lower part, but the larger one, was known as the lower town. They had used baked bricks to build around it. Then we have studied about one of the most important building, that was the Great Bath, found in Mohenjo-daro. It was sort of a swimming pool which was used for some auspicious occasion by important people to take bath in it, and the water was changed after some time. It was interconnected with the with a well nearby. Then we have studied about Kalibangan and Lothal, where fire altars never have been found, which means that sacrifices might have been performed in that era. Then we have studied about the houses in the streets. There were houses were one story or two stories. Then the rooms were built around the courtyard. They had the bathing area. The drains. Now the houses had drains which were interconnected with the drains on the roads, and they were in the straight line. At this certain distance, there were inspection holes so that they could keep it clean. When we talk about the roads, they were at right angle. They cut each other so that it could be cleaned when the wind blew on its own. Then life in the city, we have studied that people there were probably somebody like a ruler. The people were sent, but these rulers sent some people for getting some precious stones, things from what they wanted from different areas. Then they used terracotta to make some toys which have been found. Then people were practicing different occupation. We have studied about the seals of stone which were made, have been found here. Then you have seen that a statue of a man from Mohenjo-daro has been dug out, and it appears as if he is wearing a embroidered shawl sort of thing. I have given you the definition of faience. And people went from one place to another in search of raw material. Sometimes they took their raw material, or sometimes they brought the raw material. Cotton was produced by the farmers, and it was where the cotton was produced. I have told you the name. Yes, keep guessing. Okay. And the Harappan probably got copper from Rajasthan, so they have been moving from one place to other for getting the raw materials. We have to start with food for people in the cities. While many people lived in the cities, others lived in the countryside, grew crops, and reared animals. These farmers and herders supplied food to craftspersons, scribes, and rulers in the cities. We know from the remains of plant that the Harappans grew wheat, barley, pulses, peas, rice, sesame, linseed, and mustard. So, these people who were capable of growing crops, they reared animals, they led a life of farmers as well as herders. So, they produced food for scribes, the people who used to write, for the rulers, and sometimes the craftsperson, like the common people also. They had used tools like plow for digging the earth, for turning the soil, and planting seeds, while real plow, which were probably made of wood, have not survived. Toy models have been found. As this region does not receive heavy rainfall, some form of irrigation may have been used. This means that water was stored and supplied to the fields when the plants were growing. So they used plow for digging the earth and for increasing the production. And they were aware that they had less rainfall in those areas, so they used tanks for the purpose of irrigation. So you can see that these people were so intelligent, and like they were using so much of science in their lifestyle. The Harappan reared cattle, sheep, goat, and buffalo. Water and pastures were available around settlements. However, in the dry summer months, large herds of animals were probably taken to greater distances in search of grass and water. They also collected fruits like bear, caught fish, and hunted wild animals like the antelope. Antelope is an animal who is from the same family as deer. So they reared animals like buffalo and goat. They had pastures for these animals. They ate fruits. They ate animals. Now we will talk about Harappan town in Gujarat. The city of Dholavira was located on Khadir Bait, also spelled as Bait, in the run of Kutch, where there was fresh water and fertile soil. Unlike some of the other Harappan cities, which were divided into two parts. Dholavira, it is very important, it was divided into three parts. Each part was surrounded with massive stone walls, with entrances through gateways. There was also a large open area in the settlement where public ceremonies could be held. So, Dholavira, it's a place in Gujarat, and it is one of the Harappan cities. And one thing which is different here is that this place was divided into three parts. There was an open area for the like ceremonies, public ceremonies to take place. Then it was covered with surrounded by massive stone wall, and there were entrances to it. Other finds include large letters of Harappan script that were carved out of white stone and perhaps inlaid in wood. This is a unique find as generally Harappan writings has been found on small objects such as seals. So here we have found something which you can, some historians believe it was like a signboard, and for the first time something has been found where Harappan script has been used to write something in the large letters, because unlike this we have been finding certain things where seals were there, but on that we find things written in the small letters. One more thing here is I want to tell you that people have not been able to decipher this Harappan script. Whatever we are studying or we have been studying about this age is from the material, from the artifacts which we have excavated from those land. Then we will talk about the city of Lothal. It stood beside a tributary of the Sabarmati in Gujarat, close to the Gulf of Khambat. It was situated near areas where raw materials such as semi precious stones were easily available. This was an important center for making objects out of stone, shell, and metal. There was also a storehouse in the city. Many seals and sealings, the impression of seals on clay, were found in their storehouse. So when we talk about Lothal, which is on near the bank of a tributary of Sabarmati, and it is a here it this place is where raw material could be easily received, could be taken. Semi precious stones was easily available, and different things which were used for making like stone, shell, and metal, which were used for making these seals, were available here. So sealings is like impression. You must have, if you have taken some exam, like competitive one, you must have noticed that the examiner brings the envelope in which the OMR sheet is there. There something like, maybe most of the time it is red in color, but then that is stuck on the envelope, and it is cut before those OMR sheets are distributed. That is the sealing. That impression is the sealing. Okay. A building that was found here was probably a workshop for making bead, pieces of stone, half made beads, tools for bead making, and finished beads have been found. So we can make a guess that that building might have been used for making beads. Therefore, some pieces of stone have been found, some beads which are half made, some which are full made. So this proves that have been the workshop. Seals and sealings. Seals may have been used to stamp bags or packets containing goods that were sent from one place to another. After a bag was closed or tied, a layer of wet clay was applied on the knot and the seal was pressed on it. The impression of the seal is known as sealing. So what they did was, it was like some things if they were like sending from one place to another, that was sealed, and this seal proved that the thing inside was safe. Seal has to be intact, it cannot be broken. So it proved that the things which are kept inside, they are safe. If the sealing was intact, one could be sure that the goods have arrived safely. Okay, the mystery of the end. Around 3900 years ago, we find the beginning of a major change. People stopped living in many of the cities. Writing, seals, and weights were no longer used. Raw materials brought from long distances became rare. In Mohenjo-daro, we find that garbage piled up on the streets. The drainage system broke down, and new, less impressive houses were built, even over the streets. Why did this happen? So the changes which were noticed after near about 3900 years ago were like people stopped going to different places for getting the raw material. Then seals and writings and weights, all this is missing. The houses have been in bad condition. Some houses which were like new houses which were made, they were even made on the streets. The drains were broken. So like everything had changed. Why all this happened? We are not sure. Some scholars suggest that the river dried up. Others suggested that there was deforestation. This could have happened because fuel was required for baking bricks and for smelting copper ores. Besides, grazing by large herds of cattle, sheep, and goat may have destroyed the green cover. In some areas, there were floods, but none of these reasons can explain the end of all the cities. Flooding or a river drying up could have had an effect in only some areas. So, people have scholars are making a guess. Some believe that rivers might have dried up, some said that deforestation, Some believed, and why deforestation? That people use those trees to cut off, use that fuel for baking the bricks, smelting the ores. So, deforestation. Then, some believed that these grazing animals could have destroyed the green cover, all the greenery which was there. And then, some people believed that flood. But we cannot say that flood cannot occur simultaneously in all the cities and destroy it simultaneously. And same ways, one same reason cannot be the reason for destruction of all the cities. So people are still trying to give us a proper reason for the destruction. It appears as if the rulers had lost control. In any case, the effects of the change are quite clear. Sites in Sindh and West Punjab, present day Pakistan, were abandoned, while many people moved into newer, smaller settlements to the east and south. So it also appears that the rulers who were there, they have lost control over it. People have moved from their areas where they were living, that is in the east, to the east and to the south. New cities, they emerged about 1400 years later. You will read about them in chapter 5 and 8. Elsewhere, find Egypt in your atlas. Most of Egypt is a dry desert except for lands along the river Nile. Around 5000 years ago, kings ruled over Egypt. These kings sent armies to distant lands to get gold, silver, ivory, timber, and precious stones. They also built huge tombs known as pyramids. When they died, the bodies of the kings were preserved and buried in these pyramids. These carefully preserved bodies are known as mummies. A large number of objects were also buried with them. These included food and drink, clothes, ornaments, utensils, musical instruments, weapons, and animals. Sometimes, even serving men and women were buried with the rulers. These are amongst the most elaborate burial known in world history. So you can look for this place, Egypt, in the world map. There, the king used to send the armies and to get gold, silver, and their precious stones. They had built tombs, which we call them as pyramids. These, when the king died, their bodies were preserved by applying something on it, and that is known as mummies, and it was kept inside those pyramids along with the things which they used, like some ornaments, food items, something to drink, clothes, etc. At times, some living people, that is, human beings, men and women, were also buried with the body of the king. They believed that just in case those kings got up, so they will need people to take care of them, to help them, or to be at their service, and for that purpose, some living people were also buried with them. So, here we end the chapter today. Please do the question answers, which I will be sending you. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home. Thank you, class.